How you going? My name's Neil Milton and I'm the General Manager of ChildSafe, and I am speaking with the incredible Kayleen Kerr. She's the founder of eSafe Kids. It's an organisation that educates, equips and empowers children and parents to have those tricky conversations about those tricky topics. Kayleen, thanks so much for joining us once again. You've been on lots of videos and we really appreciate it. You're giving so much of your time. We do not know how important these topics are really, and you work in this space so much. Today's topic is about giving children permission to say no. Now, here's the thing, right? I thought that, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but before I became a parent, I thought it was that the parent tells the child what to do, the child does what the parent does, asks them what to do, right? But the truth is, as I've grown a little bit wiser and I've lost a bit of hair and those sort of things, I've realized that actually that's not actually the case, is it? It's actually about giving children permission to say no. What's that all about, Kayleen?
Yeah, so Neil, thank you for having me again. In the context of protective behaviours, sometimes referred to as body safety or child abuse prevention education, one of the topic areas we talk about is giving children permission to say no, and also teaching them how to be assertive and use assertive language when they need to say no. Now, what we're not teaching children is that they can say no to adults all of the time just because they want to. So if you've asked your child to eat their dinner, do you know what? They're probably going to have to eat their dinner depending on the rules in your house. Or if a teacher asks them to pick up some rubbish at school, well, they generally can't say no to the teacher. They're going to pick that rubbish up. But what we teach children is that in some circumstances that we're giving them permission to say no to anyone. And this is the way that we can teach children. So we teach children about their personal space. So we're teaching them and giving them body autonomy. So when it comes to their personal space and their body, if anyone comes into their personal space and they've asked them not to, then do you know what? They can tell them, no, they don't like it. They can move away, they can run away, or they can go and speak with a trusted adult. If someone comes into their personal space and touches their body in some way that they don't like, and you can leave that nice and broad, they can move away, they can tell the person to stop, that they don't like it, or they can go and speak with a trusted adult. And if someone comes into their personal space and touches the private parts of their body, then they can tell the person to stop, they can move away, they can stay where they are and yell for help, or when they can speak with a trusted adult about it. So we're giving children permission to say no in some circumstances. So it's not no to everything. We're just saying that you have body boundaries, and it's really important that people respect those body boundaries. And if someone does come into your personal space when you've asked them not to, then you can say no to anyone. Does that make sense, Neil?
Absolutely. Really, what you're saying is, on top of this, is that if a child feels uncomfortable or unsafe,
Yeah,
they actually have permission to say no.
yeah.
It's not an excuse to get out of something that a
No,
teacher or a parent is saying to do, but that it's actually they have permission to say no if they feel unsafe or scared or anything like that that makes them feel uncomfortable. They have that permission to say no.
yeah. And Neil, I'll share with you, certainly not a story that I would share with children, but one that I would share with parents, carers, and educators and other professionals working with children. Towards the end of the 1990s, here in Western Australia, we had a teacher. He was a year one teacher. And without going into all of the details, he was sexually abusing his year one students, many of the girls, over many years, in the classroom or on the school grounds. And when one child disclosed to her mum, it was just one in many children, but police then did a search warrant at this particular teacher's house. And it was there that they discovered all of the photos and the videos that he'd been taking of the abuse. And when we think about when we drop our children off to school, oftentimes, what do we tell our kids? We tell them, you better behave and you need to do what the teacher says. And you know what? When it comes to most things at school, absolutely, you need to behave and follow the school rules and do what the teaching staff say. But you know what? If you ever have a personal emergency or your body safety rules are broken, I am giving you permission to say no, to move away from anyone. And again, we've spoken in previous episodes, it's really important that we don't say, I give you permission to move away from an adult because of the rise in child on child sexual abuse. I give you permission to move away from anyone or say no to anyone.
Yeah.
And something else I'm just mindful of is oftentimes I hear the language, you might have heard it yourself, no, go, and tell. Oftentimes, we hear that. And that always makes me a little bit concerned because, yes, we do want our children to say no, we want them to move away, and we do want them to tell someone. Now, my concern with that is command mode language. So we're telling the child, if this happens, you must do this. And what that doesn't account for is that in most cases, when a child is being sexually abused, it is someone that they know, someone that they might love, someone that they might trust and is known by the child's family and in the wider community. Yeah. No, go, tell works really well, perhaps for those stranger incidents or when you're with someone that you don't know. But when it is someone that you know, it is far more complex. So I always say to kids that if at that time, because of who you're with or where you are, you don't feel comfortable saying no or moving away, or it's not possible, that's okay. It's not your fault. Just as soon as you possibly can, make sure that you talk with a trusted adult.
Yeah, wow. Well, it's such an important thing. Now, coming into Christmas.
Yes.
Coming into Christmas, now obviously in Victoria, it may not be the kind of Christmas that we'd like, but
yeah.
But the reality is that there's a normal approach, and I'll say normal because it's pretty normal, that parents say, give your grandma and grandpa a hug, or give your uncle and auntie a hug, or whatever. What if they don't want to? I mean, like my son doesn't want to hug certain people. He's just not physical. He's not like that, right? And so if he does give you a hug, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so we've had a conversation about the importance of recognizing that actually, it's your personal space. It's you have permission to say no. You do not have to hug someone if they ask for a hug, etc. What do you say to those parents who are kind of a little bit more forceful than that?
Okay, so it gets really tricky for children, because what happens is we're teaching them body autonomy, body boundaries, consent and respect, and that when it comes to your body, I'm giving you permission to decide who you let into your personal space. And if you're the kind of person that really loves hugs, well, you get to decide that, and not everybody loves hugs. So we teach our children that all year round, and then Christmas comes around. And suddenly our children, and I often stand in the shopping centre and watch Santa photos being taken. So we're teaching our children this, except when it's time to get the Santa photo. And I have sat and watched so many children who are clearly uncomfortable, very nervous, upset, very unhappy about sitting on that stranger's lap, and they almost get pinned to him. And then what I also hear standing in the line, because I've got young children myself as well, so I have stood in the Santa line many times, and then I hear things like, well, if you sit on Santa's lap and you smile, I'll buy you an ice cream afterwards. Or the threats, if you don't blah, 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 so, sit on Santa's lap or smile, then this won't happen. So we're threatening our children, we're bribing our children, we're coercing them to get a Santa photo. What we're doing is giving them really mixed messages. And so last year in my own local shopping centre, I was there with my children. I'll say I have 5 years where one of my children doesn't have a Santa photo because he just was not at all interested. And I just went, you know what? Okay, I'd love the Santa photo from birth to 18 or whatever. But with that child, he was not interested in that. So I respected it. But last Christmas, I was standing in line, and my children are a bit older now. And it's so great when you've had conversation with your children across their lifetime and they start to observe it for themselves. And both of my boys recognized that there was this little boy who was very upset about sitting on Santa's lap, but the Santa was so awesome. We could hear his conversation because we were next in line. And he was saying to the little boy, you know what? Some people get really scared sitting on my lap. Would you like to stand over here. So the Santa was giving the child some choice and control, and the mum was just over the moon because she still got her Santa photo. But the child's body boundaries were respected. He did not sit on Santa's lap. I think he was probably nearly a metre away from Santa. But to me, that was just demonstrating that he had body boundaries. He wasn't giving consent. He was not at all happy about sitting on Santa's lap, but he had some choice and control and participating in the photo. So that's really helpful. The other time that sometimes we give our children mixed messages is with grandparents. I'd say that's the big one, or relatives that we haven't seen for a long time.
Yeah.
You know what? You only get to see grandma once every 6 or 12 months. Give grandma a hug or sit on granddad's lap or whatever it might be. And sometimes kids want to do that, and that's awesome. They can give you that big kiss, cuddle, and squeeze. And sometimes kids are just not into that. Maybe they just want to give you a quick hug and release. Maybe they just want to give you a high five or an elbow bump or a fist pump, or maybe they just want to give you a wave. My children have grandparents that don't live in the same state. So when they got to see them, it was infrequent. And I would often say, you know what, you're not feeling like hugs right at the moment, but maybe that'll change. And we can let kids know that you might not be feeling hugs in the moment, but perhaps in half an hour, your mind might have changed. So we're just modeling to our children that they do have body boundaries and that we're listening to them and respecting them.
Fantastic. It's all about giving the power back to the child, empowering them, equipping them, and teaching them, just like your organisation. These are the resources?
Yeah, so I've got 2 great books. Again, these ones are by Janine Sanders, fabulous author we've spoken about previously. So I really love her book, Let's Talk About Body Boundaries, Consent and Respect. So that's a fantastic one. And the other book I really like is No Means No. So they're 2 great resources that can assist parents. There are others, but those ones are a really great starting place for parents.
And we won't go into this deeply, but I will say this, is that that when you teach these principles when you are young, like when they're young,
yes.
The truth is that you're raising good men and good women to respect other people. And that's really important, especially in this day and age where there is some serious issues around non-consensual sex. And that is, a lot of that can be birthed from younger age. Yeah. And so the fact that you're building that into them, they're respecting that, and therefore they have the power back.
Yeah, and you're 100% right, Neil. This education, I often get asked, well, when do I start? Well, I know that I first started talking to my son on the change table the day I brought him home from hospital. Could he understand my rabbiting on at that point in time? Absolutely not. But we read to our children when they're very young. And it's just starting the conversation. It can be really great practice for parents at that point in time. But certainly well before children go to school, we can start to really embed these topic areas, have the conversation, and then we're building on that. So eventually we're talking to our kids about respectful relationships, but we start at respectful friendships. Teaching children that, and we're modeling to our children that they're the boss of their body. And if they want to give someone permission to come into their personal space, well, they can do that. But conversely, if they're not comfortable with that, then they have a right to expect that their body boundaries, their giving of permission is respected. And the flip side of that is you have that right to feel safe at all times, to have your body boundaries respected. And other people have that right. So you need to make sure that you don't infringe on somebody else's right to feel safe and have their body boundaries respected as well.
Fantastic. We're talking with Kayleen Kerr. It's such a privilege. Thank you, Kayleen. And we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks again for donating your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Neil.